week 2 of the fantasy football season. Here's a few quarterbacks I looked at off the wire this week. The first quarterback, Aaron Rodgers of the Pittsburgh Steelers. Rodgers stuck it to his former team, the New York Jets, 244 pass yards and 4 touchdowns in his return. Coincidentally, first game after getting cut loose by the Jets last season and now with the Steelers. So this Steelers offense, I know they don't have a lot of great weapons. DK Metcalf, Jonnu Smith, 2 new guys in the offseason. They added Calvin Austin. He had a nice breakout game in this one with Rodgers in the backfield. The Jalen Warren, Kenneth Gainwell, and Caleb Johnson. But Aaron Rodgers, he still has the arm strength. Obviously, the mobility's limited. 41 years old and an Achilles injury a few seasons ago, but he looked pretty decent in the pocket as Aaron Rodgers. We know last season he did have a decent season, I thought, with the Jets, 3,897 pass yards, 28 touchdowns, 11 intos, so he still could sling it. Still has his true number one option in DK Metcalf, who had a solid debut, 4 catches, 83 yards. Calvin Austin found the end zone. Jonnu Smith found the end zone. And this running game didn't look all that great, so I think Aaron Rodgers, even at the latter part of his career, in his 40s, he's going to get a lot of throw attempts, and his next matchup this week is versus Seattle, where I thought they did a great job versus Brock Purdy and San Francisco's offense, but I still think Rodgers in his home debut with this Pittsburgh Steelers team could be an option and an ad off the wire available right now in tons of leagues at 88%. The next quarterback, Michael Penix Jr. of the Atlanta Falcons. So Penix Jr., he was a sleeper for me coming into the season, and right away week 1, he came in with a nice ball game versus Tampa Bay. 298 pass yards, a touchdown, 21 rush yards, and a rushing touchdown late in the fourth quarter. So his next matchup, a very tough matchup, though, at the Minnesota Vikings. One of the ball hawking and better defending defenses in all the pro football. But then after that, decent matchups, Carolina in week 3, Washington week 4. And we know they got good options on this offense. Bijan Robinson, one of the best backs in the league. Drake London, he had a decent ball game, but he hurt the shoulder. We'll see what his status is as the week goes on. Darnell Mooney, he was out in this game in week 1 with the shoulder. But like I said, Michael Penix, lefty thrower of the football. He's not scared of the moment. An older second-year quarterback as well in the league. 25 years old, where he stayed in college longer. And like I said, Michael Penix, he could go out there and make plays, and he's available right now in tons of fantasy leagues at 68%. Next quarterback, Matthew Stafford of the Los Angeles Rams. So Stafford, even at his age now, Stafford at the latter part of his career like Rodgers, he still could go out there, put points and put yards in the air as well. And when you got 2 great options like Puka Nacua, Devontae Adams, and then you got Kyren Williams in the backfield, you're going to put up points and get yards. So last season, Stafford, 3,762 pass yards, a good number, 20 touchdowns, a little down. And in week 1, in a matchup versus solid defense, 245 with a touchdown versus Houston. Now week 2, a matchup at Tennessee. I know this Tennessee defense had a good game versus Bo Nix and the Denver Broncos, even though they fell short and lost, but that was more the offense than the defense, where Bo Nix turned the football over 3 times in that game. But Matthew Stafford, like I said, when you got guys like Puka Nacua, Devontae Adams, and Kyren Williams coming out of the backfield, that's a lot of offensive firepower, and you're going to run into some points some weeks with that offense. So Stafford, like I said, it is a tough matchup at Tennessee, then week 3 at Philadelphia. But like I said, with those options, he could be a guy that could go out there and be a good streaming option all season long, available in 72% of leagues. Next quarterback, Geno Smith of the Vegas Raiders. Geno Smith, I thought he looked good in his debut in the 20-13 victory at the New England Patriots in week 1. 362 pass yards, a touchdown, interception, 10 rush yards. So Geno Smith last season, he put a lot of yards on the board, 4,300, 20 pass yards, 21 touchdowns, 15 interceptions. I know the touchdowns and intos weren't great last season for Geno, and this offense a little limited in the passing game. We know they got Brock Bowers, best tight end in the league. Even though he had a knee injury, it looks like he's going to be good to go and escape something major with the non-contact injury. Jacoby Myers, he had a good game, even though he requested a trade a few weeks ago. Also, they got the rookie Thornton in the receiving room, and Trey Tucker, who had a touchdown in this game, and Ginty out of the backfield. So this offense much improved from last season for Vegas. And this is Geno's first season, obviously, over here in Vegas. But now with Pete Carroll and Geno back together, he had his best seasons of his career with Pete Carroll as head coach in Seattle. And like I said, back together now in Las Vegas with the Raiders. And week 2, it's a tough matchup versus the Chargers. Good defense. We saw they played pretty well versus Patrick Mahomes and the Chiefs in the opener, winning that ball game. But Geno Smith, the former Charger, in his career. And like I said, in this offense, he's going to get the green light to throw a whole lot is Geno Smith. So right now, like I said, where he's going to throw the ball a whole lot. Last season amongst the league leaders in passing yards. And this week in a matchup where they're going to have to put points on the board to keep up with the Chargers offense. I think he's a decent add, Smith, and he's available now in tons of fantasy leagues at 79%. And the final quarterback, Daniel Jones of the Indianapolis Colts. So Daniel Jones last season cut loose by the Giants. They paid him all this money. A few years before that, he couldn't get the job done. And now, after beating Anthony Richardson out in preseason and training camp to become the starter, his week 1 ball game was a big one versus Miami. 272 pass yards, a touchdown, 26 rush yards, and 2 rushing touchdowns. So he always brings that rushing element, is Daniel Jones. He knows this is most likely his last chance to be a starter in the NFL, and he took advantage of it, obviously, in week 1 versus Miami. Week 2, I wouldn't recommend to start him, but someone to possibly stash after week 2's tough matchup versus Denver. He's got a decent schedule coming up at Tennessee, at the Rams, then the Raiders the next 3 weeks after that. So Daniel Jones, more of a deep league, 2-quarterback league ad, available in 95% of fantasy leagues. But like I said, someone to keep an eye on, where he had over 25 fantasy points in his debut as the starting quarterback for the Indianapolis Colts. That's a few quarterbacks I looked at off the wire for week 2 of the fantasy football season.